The thief was caught at dawn. He had broken into the private's quarters, no small feat, and was discovered with silver in his satchel and a knife in his boot. His name, if he gave one, was not written down, no trial, no delay. By noon, the body swung in the town square and the crows had already begun to gather. Daviduccio had caught him, the newly knighted Daviduccio. I had trusted him, praised him, handed him a sword and the trust of the town. And yet, by evening, it was revealed that he had aided the thief, helped him gain access, lied to the guards, and now a question festered in every corner of my mind. What else had I missed?
Fine day to you. Come to see the hanging, have you?
Oh, gruesome business.
I can't look. I've told the wife to stay inside. The market's still open, so you can go and get your bits and pieces if you need to. Oh, well, I must dash. I'll speak to you later. Good morning, Lord Bara.
Welcome, dear listener, to another day in Cappyborough. Well, you must have heard by now. It's not good news, is it? These things happen, I suppose. Anyway, I don't really want to dwell on it if I can. Let's move on. I'll tell you about my plans for the day. We are going to be busy as usual. I'm going to erect a new storehouse in the woodcutters district. One of the villagers has quite rightly pointed out that it will alleviate some of the strain for food demand in the markets. So thank you to Hanakin4026 for that. Also, here's the poll results for the name for the new pike company. And the winner is the Longhorn Guard. And we're not done with the pike company just yet. I'm going to promote all of them to soldiers and hopefully get one of them promoted to a knight. We're also having a festival today, and I'll show more of that later. So in order to prepare, I'm going to fully detail and decorate the entire town. I'm also going to be using mods for this, so here is a list of the mods that I'm going to be using. Right, without further ado, let's get to it. When you're in a situation where your town is continuously growing, you're going to find yourself in the situation where you're always lagging behind in meeting the needs for refined food and rustic foods. The population's constantly growing, and so I'm always playing catch up. And I've been plugging that gap continuously by adding more production in. So I'm always adding in a new hunter or a new berry picker or a new field or a new butcher or a baker, and also trying to make sure that I've got enough markets available to supply the villagers so that they can meet their needs. But there is another important part of this production chain, and it's not just about trade of oversupply, and that is that the granary plays an important part in being able to meet villagers' needs as well. Over here in this side of the town, in the woodcutters enclosure, south of the Riverside district, there hasn't been a granary. And quite honestly, it's an omission of mine. In fact, there isn't a granary that supplies the market square in Riverside district either. I've been relying on the granary that is part of the monastery, and that isn't very helpful because that doesn't actually supply the market, it only supplies the monastery. Well, I've added in a granary here, as you can see, as I'm just tidying up the church grounds as well. And this is going to make quite a large impact on the supply chain, and I will find that actually villagers' needs are being met far, far better now that I have storage close to the market square And it's located on this road that goes straight into town, which is between the production of the berries and the boar and the fish. There's a fisherman down there that we can't quite see, and the market itself. So in Foundation, I've always found that the placement of your buildings is just as important for the villagers as having the buildings themselves. Anyway, that's all there is to it, but today I wanted to tell you more about what's on my mind. Let's start at the beginning. The day was the Festival of the Millers. A tradition in Cappyborough before my time as Lord, before the walls, before the roads, before the town even bore its name. I'm told it began as some older ritual, half pagan by the sound of it. Unmarried women doused in pollen collected by would-be suitors from the surrounding lands. The logic, so it goes, apparently was to coax the young men into getting their act together. I don't know if I believe it. It sounds like the sort of tale a drunk farmer might spin with a mouthful of wine. Nowadays, it's just an excuse to throw flour at pretty girls and handsome boys. Who am I to get in the way of fun? Besides, it always ends in getting drunk, and that's something I do understand. The square was thick with cheer. Bunting was strung from beam to beam, laughter flowing from every doorway. Someone had turned an old butter churn into a drum. The youngsters were pelting each other with handfuls of dusty white flour until the cobbles themselves were white like snow. Couples danced in the pale mist it created, like joyful ghosts spinning in the summer sun. And through it all, at the far end of the square, they built the gallows. No music followed the cart that carried the thief. He was a thin man, hooded, limp, already bruised. His legs dragged behind him as though they'd given up before the rest of him had. He was to be hung before sundown, and the guard detail parted the crowd without fanfare. The children stopped throwing flour. The music lost its tempo, and behind a veil of ash and celebration, a man was led to his death. I wasn't there, not for the hanging. I had something else on my mind. I made my way to the town church, through the market and the old stone arch, into the cool shade where song and joy could not follow. I found the priest in the cloisters, amongst the candles and the cool stone. He was lighting a taper when I stepped inside, but I could tell he knew I was coming. "So, do I have it?" I asked. He turned his head, but not his body. "Is the church behind me?" He said nothing, of course. Priests rarely do at first. He poured wine, offered me a cup. For a moment, I thought his hands were shaking. "Some people are," he said at last. "But you've been away. Much has changed. Even you." I said nothing, and he filled his own cup. "You've brought much to the region," he continued. "Safety in the walls, prosperity, opportunity. You are, on all accounts, a celebrated man, but..." He drank. "You are not loved," the priest said. I could feel the pulse in my neck. "What's love got to do with it?" I asked. "I wasn't sent here to be loved." He didn't respond. He just looked at me, not with scorn, not even pity, just calm, quiet detachment, and somehow that was worse. "In heaven on earth," I said, stepping closer, "what must one do to gain the backing of your damned church?" Still no answer. I raised the goblet slightly, as if to toast. "How much more must I give?" My voice cracked a little. "Was it not enough? The monastery, the bells, the tax breaks for your scribes. I made room for your novices. I silenced the court during your holy days. I gave you land I bled for." He sighed. Not dramatic, but long, like a man weary of hearing the same argument. "Backing," he repeated softly, as if the word itself tasted strange. "You talk like a man in court," he said. "But the church is not a throne to be won. It's a flame you tend, or you're burned by it. It does not rise for you simply because you pay it tribute." "You speak of flame," I said, "but offer no warmth." Now he looked up, truly looked, and the calm dropped for just a flicker. "And what would you do with warmth, my lord?" he asked. "Would it fill your court? Would it silence the unrest in your walls? Or would you spend it, as you spend all things, trying to buy the illusion of loyalty?" I said nothing. "You've done great things," he said. "But even a monument can cast a shadow. The people fear what rises too high, and when they cannot see your heart, they imagine the worst." "I gave them safety," I shot back. "I gave them roads, law, grain in the stores, guards at the gates. What more must I?" "And they are grateful," the priest nodded. "But gratitude is not the same as love. You don't dine with them. You don't walk among them. They see you riding on fine horses, speaking courtly tongue. Raised stone towers none of them can enter. They do not know you." "Then they've never tried," I snapped. "And nor did you," he replied, calm again. A long silence fell between us. I drained the goblet. It tasted sour. "You want them to love you?" he asked, finally. "No," I said. "I want them to stand with me when the time comes." He only looked at me, and that silence held more judgment than 1,000 sermons. The conversation wore on. Civil, cold. There was no shouting, just the slow, relentless clash of two men who disagreed with one another. The monastery I had funded, at great cost, I might add. He waved it away as if it were a bauble. The cathedral bells, too loud. My court, too secular. Every olive branch I had extended had been met with a nod and a smirk. I was seriously starting to dislike this priest. Finally, he reached into his robes. "I didn't want to give you this," he said. "I was afraid of your reaction, but I think you should know." He handed me a letter. It was from Julius. He had returned to the capital. The mute boy, the boy I had brought with me on my first journey, when I was young and unshaven. I left him in this priest's care, and now... gone? Without farewell? Without even a token? Only this note, which read, "Thank you, but I must return to my home. I miss my family. Julius." It made no sense. He had no family. None but what we gave him. I pressed the priest for more, but he would say nothing. He stared at the letter as though it too were a mystery beyond his reach. I was dumbfounded. What was this madness? I couldn't understand it. Or perhaps it was simply the truth, that my grip on the town was loosening. Let's leave the cold walls of the church for now. The air in there has grown somewhat stale, I think, and I need to attend to a project in town. This is the main road that runs the entire length of the town, and along it you will find it directly links the Old Market Square to the Riverside District. There's a whole host of buildings along this road. You can find, I think it's 3 butchers, a tailor, kind of 2 tailors really, a weaver, a cheesemaker, a candlestick maker, and even the common wares workshop. You'll also find it's the backbone linking all of the different districts together. This is the single most important road in the town. It was designed that way. It was always meant to serve as the main connector, and it's always needed, in my mind, to demonstrate and show off, eventually, the wealth of the town. And that is what you can see is going on here. There's always been a small gap that is between this cheesemaker and this butcher here, and it's always been earmarked in my vision for some monument of some description. And what better is there than the manor house monument parts? The function of this building is purely treasury, but the manor house building parts themselves, I think, showcase extremely well that things are going well, that things are prosperous. And so now, when you are travelling from the Cappyborough market, which is just there in the distance, along the road, you'll pass some all of the major buildings, and you'll also pass buildings that kind of stand out as High Street, Main Street, and to remind you that this town is extremely wealthy. What I'm also going to do is satisfy a little bit of service needs, because that's getting out of hand somewhat as well. So I'm going to be a little bit creative here, and I'm going to merge in some church so that there's also some additional service availability along this road. You see, villagers travel along this road constantly. It is the most busy road in the town, so if they can get service along the way, then all the better. What I've decided to do is, instead of making this all manor house, one continuous piece of manor house, I'm going to just take off this little end here, and I'm going to blend in some churches best I can, so that it makes it seem like it's all cohesive, but also it's serving two different purposes. My one regret with doing this build here is that I felt as if it made the width of the road smaller than I would have liked. As a main artery road, I would expect it to be perhaps twice the width as of all the connecting roads. Believe it or not, in medieval times, road hierarchy still exists because simply volume of traffic. And it was quite common to have dual carriageways, they were called back then as well, so that carts being drawn by horses can pass each other comfortably going either way. Now, I haven't adhered to that, so that is also my omission, and I'm going to throw my hands up in the air and ask for forgiveness on that, but I don't have a dual carriageway road here. This monument piece, however, really does complete the sense of the cohesion in the town, because it takes those two individual districts, Riverside and Cappyborough Market, and it connects them in one continuous line of buildings that have function and purpose. Now, I said that I also had one other major piece of administration to do today, and that involves promotions of soldiers and knights. Our pike company, now known as the Longthorn Guard, have been going out on regular missions to level up, skill up, and now they have all reached a point where I can promote them, and so I can get to do that top tier mission. Yazabo and Ansfelder here have now been promoted to soldiers. So this company now is full of 5 soldiers, and I'm going to need 1 or 2 more, I think, which I will promote in the Bara troopers in order to make up the amount of soldiers that I need, so I can get a knight in the pike company. Let's have a look. No, it's still not allowing me to upgrade these soldiers to a knight, and that's because they also need to go out on a mission to get their levels up a little bit higher. I think 1 more will do. Let's just pick one. What resources do I need? I think that's what I need to ask myself. I'm a little bit low on cloth and common clothes, so I think I'll do this. I'll send them out with the Bane of Bara for support. They're ranged fighters, so that should be a pretty formidable setup with a line of pikemen and standing behind them a full 10 men of soldiers armed with bows, and I'll send the Whiskered Blades to go and get some fish and some berries while I'm at it as well. After that conversation with the priest, feeling frustrated, I rode out that afternoon. Not alone. Sir Coleman came with me. Even he was different now. Cautious, tense. He checked his sword twice when I stopped to take in a view, and he didn't even make a joke about it the way he used to. Whatever joy had once made my friend bold seemed to have gone, and that unnerved me more than anything else. I couldn't remember the last time we'd drunk together. Not properly. Not since before titles dulled our tongues and duties pulled us in opposite directions. We rode deep into the lowlands, to the forgotten edge of the frontier, where the lands seemed to remember the violence we had tried to forget. Blackened earth, broken crates, arrows scattered like bones. It was all there, the remains of a fight waged and then abandoned, the skirmish the men had spoken of, when the rebels had vanished like smoke. We followed hoofprints, shattered barrels, the occasional blood stain long since dried, and then, in a thicket, half hidden by bramble, we found him. A corpse tangled in brush, missed by grave robbers, too far gone for hope, but not yet returned to the earth. His satchel was intact. Inside, among crusted biscuits and torn cloth, we found a letter. Sir Coleman read it aloud, slow and carefully. Retreat to designated point. Maintain discipline. Further instructions to follow. Orders from Leek. It's just signed Leek, sire. He looked up at me, blank at first, then a flicker. Leek. Neither of us recognised the name, but there was a weight to it, an itch behind the eyes, something about the simplicity of the message, the confidence of it. It struck the wrong chord. This wasn't a rout, Coleman said at last. This was an organised fallback. I nodded. They're not scattered. They're waiting for orders. We stood there for a long moment, the low wind threading between our cloaks. Our horses shifted beneath us, sensing the silence had changed shape. We looked at each other, and it was clear that the same thought had settled between us. This wasn't over. Someone was giving them orders, someone with discipline, structure, command. Someone close enough to know how to strike us and how to disappear. And the clue was Leek. We rode hard back to town, with the name Leek burning in our mind like a brand. I couldn't place it. Not then. But it rattled around in my mind, something faint and bitter, like remembering a voice in a dream, only after waking. We rode until the sun began to slip behind the hills, painting the road ahead in bruised light. Neither of us said much. The name, Leek, hung in the air like a smell we couldn't place. Familiar, but wrong, and it sat heavy between us. At last, we stopped at the inn in West Cappenfield for the night. A low timbered place on the edge of the woods, where the hearth was always lit and the beer was tolerable. I'd stayed there before, back when the roads were still little more than muddy ambition. We stabled the horses, hung our cloaks, and sat ourselves near the fire. Coleman ordered the first round, and I didn't ask what it was, I just drank. The second came quickly, the third faster still. The heat of the room loosened something in me, as it always does after a hard ride. I leaned back, my cup warm in my hand, and let a memory overtake me. I remembered a night in the capital, before any of this. We had drunk cheap wine from a retired fencing instructor who claimed he had once trained a prince. Coleman had tried to duel him in the alley with wooden spoons. He lost, of course, and we laughed until our ribs ached. He wasn't a soldier then, nor I a lord. Just two fools with fire in their bellies and the world before them. I was stirred from the memory by the sudden movement and raised voices across the room. Sir Coleman had gone to the bar for another round, but now I saw him talking to a traveller, a man with road-worn boots and a travel-stained coat. The kind of man you see in every village, every crossing, a courier, maybe, a peddler. But something in the man's answer caught Coleman's ear. I saw it in the way his posture changed suddenly. The subtle leaned forward, then a hand snapped out and gripped the man by the collar. Coleman dragged him through the common room like a sack of oats. The man stumbled behind him in protest. He slammed him down at our table. "Tell him what you just told me," Coleman barked. The man blinked. "What?" Coleman gripped tighter. "Tell him what you're doing here." The traveller stammered, looking between us. "I'm here to see the priest is all." "What priest?" I asked quietly. "The town priest," he said. "I've got a letter for him." "What's his name?" Coleman demanded. "Godric, stop shoving me." "Godric what?" The man hesitated, then said it. "Godric Leek." The name hit like a hammer in the spine. Coleman let go of the man and stepped back like he'd touched a flickering flame. All the time, all the quiet meetings, the half-answers, the letter he'd given me, "You're not loved." The wind outside howled like someone laughing. Soldiers have returned from battle. They're rested now, which means we're ready. All I need to do now is select who will become the captain of this pike division. I think I'm going to choose Yazibo. She seems like a good choice, a strong character. Let's hope that we can place our trust and the trust of the town in her hands. Okay, we have 4 companies, each with a captain now. And the requirement for marching to the enemy is to have 4. You need to have 3 of differing types of companies, so swords, bows and pikes, and then you can have 1 of any of your choice. In this case, I've got 2 pike companies. I'm not going to spoil this for people who want to experience the mission for themselves, but it's not as straightforward as the ones that come before. There is a twist to it, so be prepared. Remember that this is why we came to Cappyborough. This is why we settled these lands. To provide an army for the king, for his command, to do with as he pleases. And as of this moment, we have fulfilled our promise. The next morning, we rode down to the town, and Cappyborough was not as we'd left it. The main road was occupied by a caravan of traders, and a contingent of soldiers in Northbury cloaks. They had lined up neatly as we passed them. We made our way through the town gates to find ourselves greeted by the head of the Traders Guild, standing calm as a carved statue. He was waiting for us. "I wasn't expecting a visit for another week or so. What is all this?" I asked. "I've come to speak to you, my lord." I dismounted, my cloak dusted with a day's ride. "How interesting." "Yes, I hope so. Your guards have been most hospitable. May we speak in a more comfortable setting, my lord?" We headed to the manor. No doubt by now you've heard the whispers. The king is being pressured by the church to cede these lands to them. They argue that you have lost control of the region and they promise to regain it. But we would like to sponsor you. The guildmaster produced a scroll, locked eyes with me, and began his risky proposal. "We'll petition the council. You'll be granted right to settle a monument town far beyond the reach of court, in the wilderness. We will fund it initially, protect it if needs be. You will have your own seat, your own banner, and the king's hand will never touch you again." I said nothing, searching his eyes for sincerity. The guildmaster leaned closer. "We're not the only ones tired of the old man's reign. With time, with care, we could become more than a patchwork of lords. We could set the terms, forge the future, as it were. Or we can all die slowly under a crown that grows heavier by the day. I know you feel the same." "And what do you stand to gain from this?" "Why, the same as you, of course. Freedom." I looked out across the town I had built from the windows of the manor atop the peninsula. I imagined all that I'd built was being taken away from me, and just as I felt I was getting started. The market was colourful with banners tied between them. The hung thief swayed gently in the breeze. The mute boy, now gone. The traitor I'd trusted in custody, what to do with him? The rising threat of unknown enemies. I asked only one thing. What guarantees are there? The guildmaster smiled. There are no guarantees in life. True. And what would I call this new town? I asked. Call it what you will. Bara Town has a nice ring to it. Wouldn't you agree? Well, it seems I'm off on another adventure. I wonder what the future holds. And if you did find yourself enjoying the story, you could always pop over to my Patreon. You'll find more stories, save games, this week's post, and other creations from Lord Bara's world there. But that's all I've got time for today. So I'll just say, if you have been, thank you for watching, thank you for listening. This has been the completion of the town of Cappyborough, and I have been Lord Bara. Oh, and of course, I want to say thank you to my Patreon subscribers, welcoming the newly appointed council member, Lady Rachel. And of course, Lord Mac Yoda, for his continued support. Thank you. And of course, not forgetting the long-standing guild members, you are as follows.